Dallas Cowboys fans woke up to another piece of roster news that quickly sparked debate across the entire fan base. And honestly, the reaction has been pretty mixed. The team decided to bring back edge rusher Sam Williams on a one-year deal worth $3 million. On paper, it is a cheap contract. It is not a move that damages the salary cap. It is not some huge financial gamble. And from a purely economic standpoint, you could argue there is very little risk involved. But the real question everyone is asking right now is simple. Does this move actually change anything for the Cowboys' defense? When the news first surfaced, the immediate reaction from many people was more of a shrug than excitement. Bringing back Sam Williams is not the kind of signing that suddenly makes fans feel like the pass rush just took a major step forward. It feels more like a depth move, the type of decision that usually comes later in the offseason once the big pieces are already in place. The problem is that for Dallas, the defensive edge room still feels like a group that needs more answers, not just another familiar name returning. Williams has always been one of those players that sparks strong opinions. When he first arrived in Dallas, there was a lot of talk about his potential. His athletic traits stood out, his burst off the edge looked promising, and the idea was that with the right coaching, he could grow into a disruptive defender. Over the years, the Cowboys have had multiple coaching staffs try to unlock that potential, each time hoping that this would finally be the season where everything clicked for him. The results, however, have been inconsistent. There have been flashes where Williams looked like he could become a real problem for opposing offenses, moments where his speed and aggression created pressure in the backfield. But those flashes have rarely turned into sustained production over a full season. If you look at the numbers, the sack totals have never truly taken the leap that many expected. In 2022, he recorded 4 sacks. In 2023, he added 4.5. Last season, he managed only 1 sack. Those numbers tell the story of a player who has struggled to turn potential into consistent impact. Even more concerning is that some of the underlying pressure statistics have moved in the wrong direction rather than showing steady growth. And that is why the reaction from many fans has been somewhat underwhelming. This is not a move that suddenly makes the Cowboys' pass rush more intimidating. Instead, it feels like the team is running back an experiment that has already been tested multiple times. Every year, there's renewed hope that Williams might take that next step, and every year the conversation eventually circles back to the same question. Is this simply who he is as a player? Another part of the discussion revolves around discipline on the field. Williams has developed a reputation for playing with a lot of energy, but sometimes that energy crosses the line into costly penalties. Throughout his career, there have been moments where personal fouls or unnecessary mistakes erase positive plays or extended drives for the opponent. That kind of inconsistency can make it difficult for a coaching staff to fully trust a player in key situations. To be fair, there are still aspects of his game that the Cowboys value. One area where Williams has contributed consistently is on special teams. Players who can provide value in multiple phases of the game often manage to stick around on NFL rosters longer than expected, and that versatility likely played a role in Dallas deciding to bring him back. There were also moments late last season where his run defense showed some improvement. Coaches noticed that he looked more comfortable setting the edge and holding his ground against the run, which is an important part of the job for any outside linebacker in this defensive scheme. Those flashes might have convinced the front office that there is still something worth developing. But even with those positives, the overall feeling surrounding this move remains cautious. If Sam Williams is the 8th or 9th addition to a defense that already strengthened multiple positions, then bringing him back makes perfect sense. The issue arises when fans start wondering if this is one of the primary moves the Cowboys plan to rely on to upgrade their pass rush. Right now, the edge rusher room is starting to take shape, and it includes several familiar names along with a few newer additions. Rashawn Gary is expected to play a major role. Other players like Maris Lafau and James Houston are also part of the rotation the coaching staff will evaluate. Depth pieces such as Isaiah Land remain in the picture as well, even though roster battles will likely determine who ultimately sticks around. Looking at that group as a whole, it feels like there is still room for another experienced veteran who can consistently pressure quarterbacks. That is why some fans would have preferred a different approach, perhaps targeting another proven pass rusher in free agency before circling back to someone like Williams as a depth option. Instead, this signing gives the impression that Dallas may already be shifting its attention toward the upcoming draft. If that is the case, it means the front office believes they can find a young edge rusher who eventually develops into a long-term contributor. The draft is always a gamble, though, and relying too heavily on rookie production can sometimes create problems early in the season. All of this is happening while the Cowboys continue trying to address other areas of the defense as well. Linebacker, in particular, has quickly become one of the most discussed positions among fans. The market for available linebackers has been shrinking as players sign new deals around the league, and Dallas still appears to be searching for the right solution. At one point, there were several intriguing options available, but one by one those names have started disappearing from the market. That situation creates additional pressure on the front office, because waiting too long can leave a team with fewer quality choices. When that happens, organizations sometimes find themselves forced into uncomfortable decisions, either overpaying for remaining veterans or hoping the draft falls perfectly into place. For a team with playoff ambitions, relying purely on hope is rarely a comfortable strategy. The Cowboys know they need stability in the middle of the defense, especially when facing offenses that rely heavily on the run or quick passes over the middle. A reliable linebacker group can transform how the entire defensive unit performs, helping both the defensive line and the secondary operate more effectively. And that brings the conversation back to the bigger picture. Re-signing Sam Williams might not be a headline-grabbing move, but it is still one small piece of a much larger puzzle the Cowboys are trying to solve as they build their roster for the upcoming season. The challenge now is making sure that this move is only one step in a series of decisions that ultimately strengthen the defense rather than simply maintaining the status quo. While the return of Sam Williams sparked plenty of conversation, the bigger concerns surrounding the Cowboys right now might actually sit a few yards behind the defensive line. The linebacker situation has quietly become one of the most delicate issues on the roster, and as the market continues to move quickly, Dallas finds itself with fewer and fewer clear solutions available. Throughout the early stages of the offseason, there were several linebackers around the league who looked like realistic targets. Some of them brought experience, others brought upside, and a few had the potential to immediately stabilize the middle of the defense. But as the days passed, those opportunities started disappearing. Teams across the league moved aggressively, locking in players before the Cowboys could secure one of their preferred options. That has left the front office in a position where every remaining decision carries more weight. When the available pool of players shrinks, the margin for error also shrinks. Suddenly, a team cannot afford to wait too long or hesitate on negotiations, because the difference between landing a solid contributor and settling for a temporary patch becomes very small. One of the names that has been circulating heavily in discussions is Patrick Queen. Around the league, there has been speculation about possible movement involving the linebacker, and several teams have reportedly shown interest. For Dallas, a potential trade or acquisition involving Queen would instantly bring attention, because he is a player who has already demonstrated the ability to perform at a high level in the National Football League. Queen has had stretches in his career where he looked like one of the more dynamic linebackers in the league. His speed, his ability to flow sideline to sideline, and his instinct against both the run and the pass have allowed him to make plays in big moments. Of course, like many young defenders, his career has also included inconsistency, which is why opinions about him can vary depending on who you ask. But the important detail here is that Queen has already shown that he can be productive at the professional level. That alone separates him from some of the other names still available, players who may have talent, but have not yet proven they can handle a full workload in a demanding defensive system. The challenge for Dallas, however, is figuring out the cost. Whether it is through a trade package or a new contract, acquiring a linebacker with Queen's resume is not going to be cheap. Reports around the league suggest that teams might need to part with a mid-round draft pick possibly something in the range of fifth-round selection, in order to even begin those conversations. From one perspective, that price might be considered reasonable. Draft picks in that range often produce developmental players rather than immediate starters. On the other hand, the Cowboys have historically placed a strong emphasis on building through the draft, which means every selection carries value for their long-term planning. Still, if the team truly believes the linebacker room needs a reliable presence, giving up a mid-round pick could be a calculated risk worth taking. Because the alternative, relying entirely on the draft to solve the problem, can create its own complications. The draft is filled with talented prospects every year, but even the most promising rookies require time to adjust to the speed and complexity of the professional game. Expecting a first-year linebacker to immediately command the defense, read offenses perfectly, and deliver consistent production is often unrealistic. That is why many teams prefer to combine youth with experience at that position. A veteran linebacker can help organize the defense, communicate adjustments, and guide younger players through difficult situations during games. Without that leadership presence, even a talented defense can struggle with consistency. Another factor adding pressure to the situation is how quickly other linebackers have already signed deals elsewhere. Players who were once considered potential fits are no longer available, which narrows the list of realistic targets for Dallas. Each time another name disappears from the board, the urgency increases. At the same time, the Cowboys must balance financial flexibility with roster needs. Spending aggressively at one position can create limitations elsewhere, especially when a team is trying to maintain depth across the entire defense. That balancing act often leads to difficult choices, where the front office must decide whether a player is worth stretching the budget. Some observers have suggested that Dallas may simply wait for the draft and trust their scouting department to identify the right prospect. The organization has built a reputation for finding talent through the draft, and there have been plenty of examples over the years where young players exceeded expectations once they arrived in the system. But relying exclusively on the draft can also create dangerous scenarios. If the team enters the draft with a specific position marked as a desperate need, the risk of reaching for a player increases significantly. Instead of selecting the best talent available, teams sometimes feel pressured to grab a player earlier than expected simply because they cannot leave the position unresolved. That kind of decision can have long-term consequences. Reaching in the draft does not guarantee immediate improvement, and it can also prevent a team from selecting another player who might have provided greater overall value. It is a delicate balance between addressing a need and maintaining discipline on the draft board. For that reason, some within the fan base believe the smarter approach would be to invest slightly more in free agency now, even if it means paying a little above market value. Spending a few extra $1 million for a proven linebacker might ultimately be safer than gambling everything on a rookie who still needs development. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. The search for a dominant edge presence in Dallas appears far from over. After what many around the league describe as a frustrating and ultimately unproductive pursuit of star pass rusher Max Crosby, the Cowboys are once again being linked to another intriguing defensive name. Sources close to league circles suggest the franchise has quietly shifted its attention toward a new potential target who could reshape the team's pass rush moving forward. For weeks, speculation swirled around the possibility of Crosby becoming the next marquee defender to land in Dallas. The idea energized fans and analysts alike, imagining the impact he could bring alongside an already talented defensive front. However, as negotiations reportedly cooled and momentum faded, the Cowboys' front office began reassessing its options. Rather than stepping away from the market, the organization appears to have doubled down on its efforts to reinforce the edge. According to individuals familiar with the situation, Dallas has intensified its internal discussions about another pass rusher who has recently become available in trade conversations across the league. While no formal move has been confirmed, insiders say the player's name has gained significant traction within the Cowboys building. The potential fit makes sense on several levels. Dallas has long valued aggressive edge defenders capable of disrupting quarterbacks and forcing offenses into mistakes. Pairing another high-level pass rusher with the team's existing defensive core could elevate the entire unit, particularly in high-pressure situations where consistent quarterback pressure often defines championship contenders. League observers also note that the Cowboys' front office rarely abandons its original strategy when targeting defensive playmakers. The failure to land CROSBY may have been a setback, but it does not appear to have changed the franchise's broader vision. If anything, it seems to have accelerated the search for an alternative capable of delivering similar impact. Of course, at this stage, the situation remains firmly in the realm of speculation. Trade markets can shift quickly, contract structures complicate negotiations, and competing teams could easily enter the picture. Still, the growing chatter around Dallas and its renewed interest in a prominent pass rusher has begun to attract attention across the NFL landscape. Whether this rumored pursuit evolves into a concrete deal remains to be seen. What is clear, however, is that the Cowboys are not ready to abandon their mission of strengthening the pass rush. After missing out on one major name, the franchise may already be preparing its next bold move. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.